A carefully constructed legacy, built on decades of public acclaim, often hides a more complicated truth. Behind the celebrated image of a national hero, a $15,000 payment once attempted to bury a woman's entire story. General Douglas MacArthur, the architect of this arrangement, confidently believed that sum would guarantee permanent silence. In 1934, he held the position of Army Chief of Staff, making him the highest-ranking uniformed officer within the United States military establishment. His ability to protect the institution, and by extension, his own image, appeared to surpass any other professional attribute for which he received public recognition. For 4 years, he maintained Isabel Rosario Cooper's discreet presence within a private suite at Washington, D.C.'s Chastleton Hotel. The intricate details of her seclusion were handled with the precise operational security typically reserved for matters directly impacting his public persona. However, a looming lawsuit threatened to unveil this carefully guarded arrangement, transforming the private specifics of the hotel suite, the Filipino actress, and the chief of staff into public legal evidence. To prevent this exposure, he dispatched his trusted aide, Major T.J. Davis, with a clear directive: eliminate the issue entirely. The chosen tool for this eradication was a $15,000 bank draft, accompanied by a stringent list of non-negotiable terms. The directives were absolute: depart Washington, cease all contact with the general, avoid any communication with journalists, and effectively vanish from his future existence. The Army's covert intelligence network concluded that geographical separation would effectively resolve any lingering complications. Los Angeles, 3,000 miles from Washington, D.C., represented a fundamentally distinct social landscape, almost another world. Their theory posited that if Isabel Cooper moved to Los Angeles and pursued her desired acting career, she would be swallowed by an entertainment industry notorious for producing enough internal drama to overshadow any individual's personal past. The Army staff's strategic evaluation provided a sense of reassurance. Provided she remained in California and maintained her silence, the carefully constructed MacArthur legend would remain impervious to damage. The established historical narrative portrayed Douglas MacArthur as a man of unimpeachable personal integrity throughout his life. Biographies, officially sanctioned accounts, and the institutional mythology meticulously crafted by his own public relations apparatus since the 1920s all coalesced around the central image of the general embodying classical Roman virtue. He was depicted as disciplined, austere, and unwavering in his devotion to duty, prioritizing it above any personal concerns. This was the official narrative. It had been painstakingly constructed to reflect precisely that image. Their every calculation proved flawed. Isabel Cooper, against all expectations, never destroyed the letters. Despite 4 years spent in hotel isolation, enduring the profound humiliation of the payoff, and facing the relentless poverty of a Hollywood career that never materialized as she envisioned, even as she witnessed the man who had cast her aside ascend to become the 20th century's most celebrated military icon. Through every hardship, she steadfastly preserved those letters, tucked away in a shoebox beneath her bed. They moved with her through a series of increasingly cramped studio apartments as decades passed and her aspirations faded. The general passed away in 1964, convinced that the entire archive had been permanently erased by a single bank draft 3 decades prior. He held the common, yet often mistaken belief of powerful figures that their arrangements with those they deem powerless are inherently permanent and unchallengeable. Now, let's uncover the true sequence of events that shaped her life. Understanding the precise circumstances of Isabel Cooper's arrival in Washington, D.C. demands careful attention, as conventional narratives often reduce it to a mere romantic aside, thereby obscuring crucial insights into the man at the center of the story. Their initial encounter occurred in Manila during 1930. At 50, recently divorced, He commanded significant social authority in Manila while serving in a senior military role in the Philippines, granting him effortless access to any individual he wished to engage. She was 34, not the 16 years old some narratives incorrectly claim. Though a considerable age disparity existed irrespective of the exact number, a Filipina actress of mixed heritage, professionally known as Dimples, she had established a career in local entertainment, possessing a striking beauty unequivocally confirmed by photographic evidence. Upon his return to assume the Army Chief of Staff position, MacArthur orchestrated her journey to the United States alongside him. He certainly did not present her as a public companion in any conventional understanding of the term. Instead, he settled her into a private suite at Washington, D.C.'s Chastleton Hotel, a residential establishment. This particular venue was known for the level of discretion its discerning clientele's unique needs rendered commercially viable. He covered her living expenses, made regular visits, and penned letters intimate, uninhibited correspondence typical of powerful men who feel utterly secure in the secrecy of their arrangements. Isabel Cooper resided within that suite for a period of 4 years. She found herself in Washington, D.C., a city bustling with social activity during the New Deal era, a hub of formal dinners, grand receptions, and the ceaseless ceremonial operations of government. Yet, she remained entirely unseen within its vibrant social fabric. She never accompanied MacArthur to official engagements. His colleagues were never introduced to her. Her presence was entirely absent from the social framework of his public existence, leaving no trace in newspapers or society columns. She existed as a carefully guarded secret, confined to a single hotel room. The profound psychological impact of simultaneously being housed, financially supported, and yet utterly hidden. This complex reality of her existence is largely undocumented from her viewpoint within the historical record of that era. Instead, the available records merely present the external facts of the hotel, the length of her stay, the correspondence, and subsequently, the lawsuit. In 1934, a lawsuit emerged, initiated by journalist Drew Pearson, who had acquired sufficient intelligence regarding the arrangement to leverage it in a defamation suit MacArthur had previously brought against him. The exact methods by which Pearson gathered his intelligence hold less historical weight than MacArthur's immediate reaction once that information threatened to become courtroom evidence. Davis was dispatched with the payment. That $15,000 in 1934 currency represented a truly substantial amount. When adjusted for inflation, using purchasing power calculations favored by historians, this figure translates to roughly $300,000 in today's economy. This was a significant financial tool, strategically deployed with a singular objective: the permanent elimination of Isabel Cooper from MacArthur's institutional risk assessment. She accepted the funds. Her departure from Washington followed immediately. She returned the correspondence Davis had been ordered to retrieve most, though not all, of the collection. Mid-1930s, Los Angeles possessed a highly efficient mechanism for absorbing the aspirations of newcomers, many of whom arrived convinced that mere talent and beauty alone guaranteed the careers they envisioned. Isabel Cooper possessed both qualities upon her arrival, yet she also carried an unspeakable past, an unnamed benefactor, and a theoretical financial buffer that the $15,000 was supposed to provide. However, the practical costs of establishing a new life in a bustling city rapidly depleted those funds, far quicker than anticipated. Professionally, she adopted the stage name Chubing, a Filipino term of endearment, choosing an identity that was distinctive yet offered no revealing explanations. She actively pursued the acting career she had meticulously planned during her years confined to the Chastleton Hotel, a period that offered ample time for strategizing, but no chance for execution. Auditions became a regular part of her routine. She diligently cultivated connections within the industry. Her appearances in film productions were limited to roles credited with the minimal detail typically afforded to performers whose names lacked commercial value for advertising. The effort was undeniable, yet the promised career remained elusive. The particular torment of Isabel Cooper's Hollywood period wasn't merely isolated poverty, though her financial struggles were indeed severe and well documented by those who knew her then. It was poverty, juxtaposed with pervasive visibility. During the very years she struggled to establish her acting career, Douglas MacArthur was anything but an obscure figure fading into obscurity. His image appeared relentlessly in the newsreels preceding the very films she aspired to join. His name filled newspaper headlines. His voice dominated the radio waves. Then, in 1941, when Japan invaded the Philippines, her homeland, and the very place MacArthur had discovered her, he ascended to become the undisputed central figure of the Pacific War. His visage graced the cover of every prominent American magazine. His voice resonated across every broadcast. From her Los Angeles apartment, she observed him orchestrate the liberation of the very nation he had removed her from. The complex psychological calculus of that unique experience, witnessing the man who paid for your disappearance emerge as the war hero of your occupied homeland. All while you struggled in a Hollywood studio apartment to secure a single film credit, does not resolve into a simple, coherent narrative. Instead, it compounds. This burden manifested as a distinct psychological weight, one that clinical literature might term a prolonged psychological toll, but which those close to Isabel Cooper during that era simply called haunting. She was, indeed, haunted. And she continued to safeguard those letters. This singular detail offers the most profound insight into the internal ledger she meticulously maintained throughout her ordeal. The correspondence served as undeniable proof of a liaison she dared not publicly acknowledge, lest it shatter what little remained of her social standing. They held no commercial value she could access without the very public disclosure that the $15,000 payment had been explicitly designed to avert. Nor were they likely a source of comfort, given the painful circumstances surrounding their abrupt termination. Nevertheless, she retained them. Stored in a simple shoebox beneath the bed, they traveled through countless apartments, every forced relocation, and each passing year that widened the chasm between her reality and the general's. These letters represented the sole possession the general's money had failed to reclaim. She was the woman before a makeup mirror in a Hollywood dressing room, meticulously applying the facade of a career the industry would ultimately deny her. She rehearsed lines for auditions where the casting office had often already made its final decision long before she even entered the room. Meanwhile, the general stood on the deck of the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, September 1945, formally accepting the Japanese Empire's surrender before a global assembly of news cameras. His crushed officer's cap, the iconic corncob pipe, all part of the meticulously crafted image of a man who had forged himself into a living monument, now receiving the official validation of that creation. And Ade Davis, somewhere within a Washington office during the 1930s, diligently processed the administrative details of an arrangement his professional duties compelled him to execute without personal judgment. The payment records themselves were filed, then mysteriously unfiled, and ultimately vanished from the archive. A common fate for documents whose continued presence becomes inconvenient for those in power. And the shoebox, tucked beneath the bed in a small studio apartment, safeguarding 30 years of correspondence that had outlasted everything except the woman who had preserved it. These four disparate images coexist simultaneously within the same unfolding narrative. They refuse to coalesce into one singular moral conclusion. Instead, they reside side by side within the historical record. Much like the true repercussions of powerful men's private choices often become apparent only when one examines the complete picture, not just the officially sanctioned, cropped view. In 1960, Cooper arrived at a profound, final private decision. Within a modest Los Angeles room, she elected to bring her personal narrative to a close, entirely on her own terms. The clinical record of these events is precisely what the legal and medical documents from that era meticulously detail. The broader historical record, however, provides a crucial context absent from the clinical findings. She was 54. For 26 years, she had endeavored to construct a life from the meager resources left after the $15,000 payment and her compelled exit from Washington. All the while, the general, whose intimate letters she had carefully preserved, remained alive, widely celebrated, and still the unassailable icon portrayed by the official narrative. Her death preceded his by 4 years. MacArthur passed away in April 1964 at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, aged 84, surrounded by the complete ceremonial apparatus of a nation whose highest military accolades he had spent a lifetime amassing. A state funeral was accorded to him. His interment took place at the MacArthur Memorial in Norfolk, Virginia, within a structure specifically designed to preserve his papers and perpetuate his legacy in the enduring institutional form he had meticulously engineered throughout his career. Following his death, the letters eventually came to light. The precise route by which Isabel Cooper's correspondence with MacArthur became part of the historical record is meticulously detailed in the research notes of biographers and historians who scrutinized that period in the aftermath of his passing. These letters had outlasted her. They were discovered among her personal belongings. Ultimately, they reached the researchers who were constructing the documentary basis for a reevaluation of the MacArthur legend, a reassessment made inevitable by the sheer comprehensiveness of his self-created institutional mythology. The correspondence revealed an intimacy characteristic of private exchanges between two individuals engaged in a sustained personal relationship. Furthermore, for historical biographers, they provided precise, irrefutable evidence of a private existence the official record had deliberately omitted. The letters meticulously documented the relationship with a level of specificity that the $15,000 payment had been explicitly designed to permanently suppress from the historical record. The payment had purchased 3 decades of silence. It had not, however, secured the archive's destruction. Biographies that subsequently integrated the Cooper correspondence into their MacArthur assessments yielded a portrayal of the general entirely absent from earlier officially sanctioned accounts. This was not a portrait utterly demolished. MacArthur's wartime operational record in World War II and his governance of occupied Japan were too profoundly significant for any private correspondence to relegate him to a mere historical footnote. Instead, it was a more intricate depiction, a portrait of a man whose public persona, carefully crafted as a paragon of Roman virtue, necessitated the active management and, at times, the financial suppression of the inconvenient truths lurking beneath that facade. The entire specific burden of maintaining that carefully curated image had fallen squarely upon one individual. Isabel Cooper had arrived in Washington, D.C. at 34, possessing a promising career and a future that her 4 years confined within the Chastleton Hotel had effectively obliterated. She was paid to vanish, and she largely succeeded. The public record of her existence during MacArthur's most celebrated years reveals almost nothing of her. From 3,000 miles away, across vast social and economic divides, she witnessed the liberation of her homeland by the very man who had engineered her removal from it. She had steadfastly retained his letters, even when their preservation offered no discernible practical benefit, given her life's harsh realities. And she made her ultimate decision 4 years before the man who had so coldly calculated her future ever learned if his own carefully constructed legacy would endure. His calculations did not fully hold. The historical archive operates under different rules. The general expended $15,000 to purchase her silence. For the subsequent 3 decades, he dedicated himself to constructing a monument founded on the flawed assumption that her silence would be eternal. He died in 1964, still convinced his monument's foundation remained unshakable. He never knew the shoebox persisted, nor that its contents, the letters, remained perfectly legible. The archives, it seems, invariably retain what powerful individuals attempt to expunge through payment. The monument in Norfolk endures. The intimate correspondence is now firmly embedded within the historical record. Both realities exist concurrently, and the chasm between them precisely quantifies the true purchase power of that $15,000 payment. Not absolute silence, merely 30 years of it. And then, inevitably, the truth emerged, exacting the customary price that suppressed narratives always demand for their eventual revelation.